Greetings, survivors. I will continue my stream of thoughts, and today I would like to talk about wasted techniques. Yes, potential and abilities of certain characters can also be wasted, and very much so. Let me immediately clarify what exactly I consider an elite jutsu. It is a technique with high potential and power that was used only once and at the same time did not achieve its goal. That is, this very potential was not revealed, and then the author simply abandoned it, and we never saw this technique again. I will give anti-examples for clarity. Let's take Danzo's seals. One immobilizes the opponent, and the second completely annihilates them. In words, it sounds cool, but these jutsu will not make it onto my list, simply because in practice, they are not that cool. The first seal is broken by a large chakra outburst, and the second one can simply be dodged by jumping away. So the actual potential of these techniques is not particularly high. Another anti-example, but from a different angle, is Izanami. Definitely a strong technique, shown only once naturally. If we do not take fillers into account, of course, it is not a waste. Because Itachi achieved his goal, and the technique fully realized its potential by fulfilling its direct purpose. So this is not a waste. I repeat, in my understanding, a waste is taking a truly powerful technique, using it ineffectively, and then abandoning it until the end of the story, which is very sad and unfair. I should clarify that I will often use unofficial names of techniques from the data books and call them in my own words, so that it is immediately clear what I am talking about. I hope you have stocked up on something tasty, because this will be a long and curious conversation. Enjoy watching. Let's go chronologically and start with the first season, namely with a technique that I relatively recently mentioned in my analysis of the fight between Tsunade and Jiraiya. The fifth Hokage is so strong that with a single punch can turn a person into a pile of minced meat, literally a one punch from the world of Naruto. Although, in fact, she does not even need to strike at full force to make her opponent incapacitated. Tsunade has a special paralyzing technique. With just a light touch, she disrupts the functioning of the entire nervous system of a person. All signals transmitted by the brain to the body get mixed up. For example, the desire to move an arm results in a leg moving instead. This is an unreal imbalance, capable of disabling absolutely anyone. It is a pity that she ran into Kabuto, a brilliant medic capable of taking control of his body even under such difficult conditions. Yakushi was one of the few who could counter this jutsu, and after him, Tsunade somehow forgot about this technique. Along with her, Kishimoto forgot about it as well, not bothering to pass such a powerful weapon onto Sakura, for example. Haruno is listed as a user of nerve paralysis only in the game. In general, Tsunade appeared in the story more as a medic than as a fighter, and she saved many lives. Among them, Rock Lee. Let's talk about him. When it comes to the abilities of Thick Brows, everyone immediately remembers the chakra gates, somehow ignoring the drunken fist. An incredibly entertaining, and at the same time, effective way of conducting battle. This is not only a cool reference to martial arts from old Chinese movies, but also a curious fighting style based on aggressive pressure and unpredictability. Who knows how many enemies Lee could have defeated using the drunken fist? We will never know, because this type of taijutsu did not help him defeat Kimimaro, and in the future, Thick Brows completely gave up alcohol. Moving on to Shippuden, here is an ability that was truly wasted, C3. A technique capable of destroying an entire village, used only once against Gaara, whose shield covered the village. Dropping such a projectile on Sasuke would have left him with no chance. Yet it was Sasuke who happened to have a full set of counters to C4, which only a handful of people in the entire ninja world can resist. And C0 would have been an insane imbalance in combination with an immortal body during the war if only, by the author's will, Deidara did not stand still like a statue and wait to be stuffed into a puppet. As a result, the bomber used his strongest attacks against almost the only characters who could counter them, and where the enemy could have been destroyed, if not for character traits dictated by authorial decisions, he did not do so, and forgot about the most powerful abilities in his arsenal, a pure waste. Let's move on to another eccentric member of Akatsuki Hidan, with his one and only jutsu, the Blood Curse. Hidan is often called the weakest and one of the least useful members of the organization, although his ritual is actually a terrifying imbalance if you think about it. It's just that preparing the curse in the middle of battle is not very convenient. It takes time. Of course, he killed Asuma with this technique, so partially it worked as intended, but only thanks to Kakuzu, who stitched his partner's head back on in time. Otherwise, ritual would have been interrupted, and the whole plan could have gone down the drain. In the fight with Shikamaru, he even attacked an ally out of ignorance instead of an enemy, which made the ritual seem not only useless, but even harmful. But just imagine what would have happened if he had used the curse not in battle, but a bit more cleverly. Say, Sasori through his spy network, or Zetsu with his secret movement across the world, obtain blood samples of powerful ninja. Akatsuki receives this blood, performs the rituals, and digs up the specified ninja with a one-shot. Voila, even Kage, and in general the elite of any hidden village, could be wiped out without leaving home. The Jashin priest is a walking death note, only better, because he doesn't even need to know names. A couple of drops of red liquid are enough, and distance should not be an obstacle. As far as I remember, the range of the technique was never specified. It worked on Kakuzu, even though the rogues were quite far apart. It's a shame that the ability ultimately received no development and was forgotten along with Hidan. The technique from Boruto, by the way, was just a pathetic copy, and did not even come close to the original curse. Next, I will touch on two techniques at once, presented at approximately the same time. These are Suigetsu's hydrification of the Hozuki clan in general, and Konan's paper form. Both abilities allow one to avoid physical damage, which makes them almost direct analogs of Obito's Kamui, and that is an unspeakable imbalance. Just imagine you are being beaten by anything at all, and you don't care. How do you waste such a powerful ability? Either don't let it be properly used, or immediately release a hard counter into the arena. In Suigetsu's first truly serious fight, and I'm talking about the clash with Killer Bee, Suigetsu calmly endured the enemy's attack, but then he was either forced to expose himself to Sasuke's attack in order to deal damage to the enemy, or even stop avoiding incoming damage altogether, and instead take it upon himself to protect the team. Bee himself was a dangerous opponent for hydrification users, since he, like other Cloud Ninja, wielded the lightning release. This same element quickly neutralized Suigetsu at the summit, when he once again ran into the cloud. Unlucky is unlucky. Besides, this is somehow unfair in general. As a rule, basic elements have superiority over only one other basic element, but for some reason, lightning dominates both earth and partially water. As a result, the plot significantly cut down Suigetsu's role as a fighter. Hydrification still allows him to escape traps and infiltrate hard-to-reach places. After the summit arc, he never again got the chance to avoid enemy attacks in serious battles, let alone crawl into noses, ears, or mouths to instantly kill opponents from the inside. Konan has a similar pain. To begin with, she has practically no full-fledged battles. Skirmish with Jiraiya ended just as quickly as it began. The Sannin happened to have oil at hand, because of which the Kunoichi's paper stuck together and became useless. How many characters do you know who fight using oil? Naturally, Konan ran into her teacher. In her second serious fight, she encountered an equally impenetrable opponent. Still, Konan found a way to bypass Obito's Kamui and bring him to the brink of death. However, the plot unfolded in such a way that the Kunoichi was exhausted by the end of the fight and could no longer maintain her paper form. Very convenient for her enemy, who calmly revived himself and exploited this weakness. If Konan faced any other opponent, their days would have been numbered. But alas, either she was unlucky with rare counters like oil, or the plot and its author turned out to be stronger. In the Prophecy of the Teacher and Revenge arc, there were an extraordinary number of sacred techniques. One of the saddest among them is undoubtedly the Toad Song Genjutsu. Yes, it takes a long time and Jiraiya needs time to enter Sage Mode, which is not very convenient, but the result is worth it. The sound is capable of paralyzing even such a powerful character as Pain. After that, the enemy can be calmly killed, and they will not be able to do absolutely anything. We've already guessed why this extraordinarily powerful genjutsu ended up on my list. The toads affected several pains, but not all of them, and those who broke free were subdued by Chibaku Tensei. As a result, Nagato nullified all the efforts of Fukasaku, Shima, and Jiraiya. Did the toads ever try to repeat this feat later in the story? Of course not. Why would they? At most, they demonstrated a much simpler sound technique that temporarily buffs the target. Although a full song during the war could have been useful if only Kishimoto had remembered this ability. And what kind of list would this be without Kirin? You knew it would be here. Sasuke created and perfected this technique for several years. Then he prepared it throughout a significant part of the fight against Itachi. All of that was done in order to defeat his older brother. This is an incredibly powerful ability that turns a large building into a pile of rubble. And the thing is, Kirin cannot be nullified by chakra-absorbing techniques, because this is not chakra, but first and foremost, natural lightning, which Sasuke then controls as his own. From any angle, this jutsu is amazing. And that's not even mentioning the design. A gigantic monster made of electricity looks insanely badass. And you know what? Yeah, you watch the anime, right? You know that all of this was pointless. Because Susanoo basically sent Kirin packing, along with all of Sasuke's efforts. Apparently, the guy got so upset that he never used Kirin throughout the rest of the manga's storyline. You people criticize anime fillers, but by the way, they actually remembered Kirin in the final battle there. The moment turned out really cool, and fans were happy to see the technique return. Yeah, in case you didn't know, in the manga, Sasuke did not use Kirin against Naruto. In Boruto, by the way, they also remembered Kirin. Respect to the studio for that. And you know, unlike other jutsu in this video, Kishimoto actually had a reason not to bring Kirin back. No, it wasn't because of inconvenient conditions for using it. The anime showed that later in the story, it was even easier to summon the lightning monster. So what was the problem? Once, Shingo Kimura, the author of the Sasuke Retsuden manga, asked Kishimoto how he managed to depict this technique so spectacularly. From an artistic point of view, the Kirin scene is one of Kimura's favorites, so he became curious about his colleague's secret. The audience held its breath. The author of Naruto answered that the whole trick was in his old copying machine, which had an outline function that allowed him to achieve the desired effect. Of course, the technology worked in tandem with Kishimoto's talent, and he still had to work hard on that scene. So, repeat myself, this feature existed on the old machine. In the new model that Kishimoto used later, this outlining function simply didn't exist, which meant the author physically could not recreate Kirin the same way as the first time. And that's really sad, because Kirin could have been used for many breathtaking combinations. The Storm Game series is a vivid example of that. In the same fight between Itachi and Sasuke, we were shown Orochimaru's Hydra, which there isn't really much to say about. Just a colossal beast, roughly comparable in power to the tailed beasts, which nevertheless turned out to be no match for the Totsuka blade. The sword sliced the snake apart and then sealed it away completely. An awkward situation, a brutal waste. Do you remember the ability that allows you to read any memories, even sealed ones? Even though it's not a combat technique, it had enormous potential to turn the entire ninja world upside down, to learn the truth about many fatal events, and uncover the secret intentions of certain people. Obviously, if the Leaf Ninja used this technique more often, there simply wouldn't be any plot, so it was shown only when it was convenient. By the way, speaking of reading people's minds, Ninjendo, the human path of pain, possessed a similar ability. This power could have given Nagato a lot even before the invasion of the Hidden Leaf, making him one of the most informed characters in the entire title. However, for some reason, he was in no hurry to use it. But Kishimoto wasted the key feature of the human path soul extraction even more blatantly. It would seem that we are literally dealing with a one-shot technique. One touch, the person is dead. Despite that, in the fight against Jiraiya, Nagato decided to play teacher and did not use soul extraction. In the battle against Naruto, the situation was exactly the same. Pain even decided to sacrifice the human path in order to save the animal path, although in that case, the decision was justified by the fact that the Jinchuriki could not be killed. Where things were different was the second confrontation with Naruto. There, Nagato, being under Kabuto's control, did not hesitate to try to pull Naruto's soul out. But once again, he ran into the main character, whose chakra arms suddenly turned out to be an excellent tool for a game of tug-of-war, which made the task much more difficult for the enemy. In the end, one of the strongest abilities of the Rinnegan turned out to be almost useless throughout the entire manga storyline. And yes, I'm not done with the Rinnegan and souls yet. Pulling out one soul at a time is good, but pulling out several at once is even better. Remember how monstrously imbalanced Nagato's Phantom Dragon was. With a single touch, it could instantly kill crowds of people by taking their souls. During the war, such a technique could have wiped out entire armies. But aside from Nagato's flashback, this ability never appeared again. As far as I know, the author never gave a clear answer as to why that happened. However, some logic can be found if you look at the mechanism of using the technique. Before creating the dragon, the Uzumaki connected himself to the statue with rods, after which the Gedomazo drained the user's life force. Obviously, it would be impossible to perform the same trick through Pain's dead bodies. There was simply no life force left in them. Obito and Madara, on the other hand, had no intention of exhausting themselves like that, and besides, they had more effective mass destruction techniques, so the need for the dragon disappeared. And yet, personally, I really wanted to see this hellish thing in action again. Let's jump to the Kage Summit arc, where we were introduced to Djugo's Berserk mode. A certain charm of this character lay in his switching from the personality, peaceful, quiet guy, to a bloodthirsty monster ready to destroy everything. At the summit, the revelation of this aspect of Djugo's character reached its peak with his full transformation, which looks luxurious at the very least. I really like this design. Not only did Djugo become more durable in Berserk mode, but he could also charge powerful chakra blasts, which again, looks insanely cool. And what do you think? In the manga, this form lasted for just a few pages, before the Raikage shut it down. Yes, we saw a return in Boruto, but you understand that's a new story with new main characters. And Djugo wasn't exactly drawn impressively there, looking more like a secondary antagonist from a feature-length movie rather than the monster we saw before. And in the new generation, he was defeated both times just as quickly. Returning to the topic of one-shot attacks, I can't ignore Torune's deadly insects. One touch was enough for the bugs to transfer to the enemy and poison their body, destroying the organism at the cellular level. But not against someone who can become intangible and throw his own arms away in case of danger. In the only canon fight Torune participated in, he ended up facing an inconvenient and extremely powerful opponent. The character was supposedly rehabilitated in fillers, but no, they didn't really try. Even though Torune was given new, even stronger techniques, his opponent was Shino, someone who had spent years raising insects with immunity to insect poison. No matter how you look at it, fate can be very cruel to Naruto characters. Or rather, do you remember Kisame's giant shark? The one Zetsu wanted to use but didn't have time, his head got chopped off. When Hoshigaki himself finally used this technique, a colossal fish appeared before us in all its glory, clearly capable of causing massive destruction. Anyone who tries to stop it with ninjutsu will be disappointed. The shark will absorb the chakra and become even stronger. Sounds like one of the most dangerous techniques in the Naruto universe. And it is. We would have seen the shark's power in practice if, at its very first use, Kisame hadn't run into Guy. Daytime Tiger is a taijutsu technique that represents a strike of monstrous pressure, meaning there is no chakra involved in this technique, making the shark useless against it. The cat ate the fish, and we never saw the true potential of Kisame's most destructive ability. Konan's paper ocean looked just as impressive. Yes, we already mentioned her, and it's time to return to this kunoichi. Just think about it, a huge amount of preparation time and 600 billion explosive tags. All to kill Obito, which she ultimately succeeded in doing. True, Obito's resurrection was not part of Konan's plan. Let's be honest, if any other character without Izanagi, teleportation, or flight abilities had been in the masked man's place, it wouldn't have been pleasant for them. Konan spent an enormous amount of time and effort preparing, ultimately creating something truly grand and terrifying. Unfortunately, all her efforts went to waste because of a single cheating ability. Let's talk about the fourth great Ninja War saga, where Mu especially stood out. The defining trait that earned the second Tsuchikage the nickname the Invisible Man was his camouflage. The technique allowed him to hide both his appearance and his chakra. Just imagine what he could have accomplished if Kabuto had sent him into the Alliance's rear to the medics, or even straight to headquarters, to one-shot the Raikage and Tsunade, or at the very least, disable the communication system. Instead, he was sent straight into Gaara's arms, whose sand immediately reacted to the touch and revealed the enemy's location. A quick waste of an extremely useful technique. Another technique whose potential was never fully realized is the Flowering Forest. There aren't many characters in Naruto capable of escaping the range of its poisonous pollen. You can rise into the air, hide underground, or teleport. In all other cases, the only way to resist the technique is to hold your breath, which can hardly be called a reliable measure. Flowering Forest, absolutely a technique for destroying entire armies. And yet, the Kage mocked it as much as they could. First, Gaara lifted himself and his allies above the pollen, already avoiding it. Then, when the 5 Kage were defeated, Onoki saved the situation. The Tsuchikage simply snapped out of it thanks to sheer willpower. So you're left wondering whether the technique is actually weak, or whether it's the plot, but it is clearly being downplayed. The jutsu was shown once again exclusively in the anime, and there Madara bypassed it thanks to perfect Susanoo. Personally, the pollen is very useful. It's just that plot circumstances are apparently even more useful. I also want to remind you of Dan's soul transfer technique shown during the same war. Not only does the character become immune to attacks while in spirit form, and can quickly traverse huge distances to scout or relay information, but he can also kill enemies silently by possessing their bodies and destroying their souls. Sounds like insane technique on the level of Hidan's curse or Nagato's dragon. Despite that, in flashbacks, we only saw Dan either in love or dead. Sure, we're told that he killed many enemies, and I'm inclined to believe it. I still would have liked to see soul transfer in combat. During the Fourth War, the resurrected Dan used this extremely dangerous technique just to talk to his former lover. Zero judgment, maximum understanding. I just wanted more action with the spiritual form. I'll end this video with the sand bullet technique used by Gaara and Shukaku. The Kazekage creates countless tiny sand projectiles, and the tailed beast sends them at the enemy with a powerful gust of wind. This technique covers a huge area and has extremely long range, making dodging almost impossible. However, being riddled with sand is only half the problem. The projectiles inside the enemy's body remain under Gaara's control, allowing him to paralyze the opponent and then do whatever he wants with them. And of course, the Kazekage just had to run into Madara with this deadly technique, against whom, it seems, nothing works at all. Thank you for listening to my stream of thoughts. It would be great if you subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what you think about this. Thanks for watching.